We need to give you a shout out, Karen. Hold up, we got to give her an on-air shout out.
Yeah.
Karen be on top of it.
Yep.
You need a Karen, bruh.
Yeah.
You better find you.
You can't find
She
a Karen.
doesn't. She doesn't come with the election, bruh.
If you can't find a Karen, get your grandmother, because that's how she's always telling me what to do and where to stand. And
Yeah, well, we need that. We politicians need that kind of thing.
All right, I am rolling. Whenever you guys are ready, begin.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, friends and enemies, welcome back to We Act Radio. We're here broadcasting live in the studios of Legacy Studios in DC. Joined by some illustrious guests. Coming back again is, the man of the hour, U.S. Senator Michael D. Brown, celebrating his 71st birthday. We're here to give him his flowers. And we also have the Democratic nominee to replace him in January, if he's successful in the general election in November, Ankit Jain.
Yep. Well, great to be here, Kymone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys for making time for us before y'all head out to the Democratic National Convention. I think it was a great opportunity to have the outgoing and incoming person in this. So I want to first start off, like, Ankit, what made you want to run for an unsung hero seat that's unpaid?
Yeah.
As that you don't have your own office on the Capitol Hill. You have a cuticle in the basement of the Will Smith building that this man has been laboring in since 2007. What made you want to try to fill his shoes?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I was telling people I was thinking about doing this, that was the first question they asked me too. It's a good question. You know, I'm a voting rights attorney. I work at Fair Vote, and democracy issues are something I'm very passionate about. It's really my number one passion. I've been involved in the statehood movement for several years now, you know, going to rallies, doing lobby day, going to hearings and all that kind of stuff. And so it's just something, you know, I work every day to try to make sure people have the right to cast a meaningful vote. And then here in DC, me, my friends, my neighbors, my loved ones, were all denied that right that we're told is, you know, fundamental to being an American citizen. And so it's an issue I'm very passionate about, a cause I'm very passionate about. And I thought I could bring my experience in legislative advocacy, you know, at Fair Vote. And then before that, I worked at the Sierra Club doing environmental law. And so wanted to bring that experience, you know, kind of seeing how the sausage gets made in some ways, seeing how to run successful advocacy campaigns and how to not run successful advocacy campaigns, and try to bring that experience and that passion I have to this position to advance DC statehood forward, to protect home rule, because I really do believe that DC statehood will happen in the future, especially when we have the right Congress in place.
You know, let me just add to what Ankit said, that it's funny why I did it. I did it because I was very successful at being a political PR guy. Mm-hmm. And I said, when I looked at what was going on 18 years ago, when nobody was talking about it, I said, this is a movement that's sorely in need of a good PR guy. Yeah. So, and that's always been my approach. You know, I don't have Ankit's legal background or legislative experience. Was put up billboards and, you know, and do direct mail and do, you know, try to do things to get the word out. That's how my radio show started. It just started because I heard from DC Vote that they had done a nationwide survey where 80% of America thought we had the same rights as everybody else, and they just didn't know. So I said, well, what we need to do is get the word out somehow, right? And internet radio costs. I paid for everything. Ankit doesn't know how lucky he is. For the first 9 years, we got that I was in office, got no money at all. So, but $40 a week was something I could afford out of my own pocket to put in a show on air, and that's what it cost me to begin with, and so that's why I did it. get the word out.
Let me just tell a funny story. So Senator Brown, he's very famously has a very large billboard in his house saying, "You're now entering the District of Columbia. Be aware, all your rights are being taken away from you," because he lives on the border with Maryland. And so the head of our legal program at Sierra Club, she came into DC for meetings, and I was in a meeting with her, and she's like, I just came into DC. I saw this big sign as I walked in. You're now entering the District of Columbia. All your rights are being taken away. I was like, I think I know whose sign that is.
Wow, I got to see the sign. I need a picture of
Well,
that.
yeah, we did it because one day I was just standing out there and I go, gee, my house is the first house that you come across when you come down Massachusetts Avenue into the District of Columbia. I live on the street that divides D.C. from Maryland. And I said, well, we should put out a welcome sign, right? And our welcome sign should tell the truth. And you know what? When I put it up, it was a big billboard, and when I put it up, I said, the neighbors are just going to freak out about this because I live in Ward 3, and they're just going to get not one.
For those outside of D.C., Ward 3 is the wealthiest ward in the nation's capital.
Right, and not one neighbor has had a negative thing to say about it. People stop and get their pictures taken in front of it. Karen will tell you that it got on every TV station and stuff in Washington. It was a great success, and we were surprised at that.
Well, I'm
but
glad.
It's still up.
We should mimic the success of that. It should be replicated at every welcoming sign
Right,
at
it
the
should
border.
be every spot you come into the district should say, hey, man,
we'll call
don't
that
move here.
We'll call that the Senator Brown marquee or something. To honor you.
I'd be happy to turn you on to the sign company. We found a company that makes stop signs. So
can we talk about
100
that?
years.
Can we talk about replicating that sign at every welcoming sign of the District of Columbia? Because let's talk about what we can do. I don't like those conversations. Oh, woe is me. We don't. The glass is half empty. No, what can we do?
Well, one of the things we did back in the last Congress was we did a huge yard sign distribution operation. And so if you see those DC Statehood signs, those most of those went up in the past few years. I was one of the sign distributors. And I will point out that when there was a hearing on the statehood bill, they had a Republican witness who was saying, why does D.C. need statehood? They can already influence members of Congress by all those signs they're putting up in their yards saying statehood for D.C. now. And so, obviously it's a ridiculous point, but I think that there are things, to your point, that we can do to get more strategy and more attention to the cause. I think Senator Brown put up a billboard outside the DNC one year trying to make sure DC Statehood got in the Democratic Party platform and was successful in that effort. And so things like that are definitely things we need to do more of.
And we really just need to, we have people around the country who are now getting involved. I just testified in Nebraska, for God's sakes. There were 2 senators from Nebraska, one of whom went to Georgetown University. We have so many people that pass through Washington that understand this. And they put together a resolution to support DC statehood. And I went there to testify in favor of it. Unfortunately, it didn't pass because it's a Republican Senate in Nebraska. But I got lucky. I've got to tell you a story real quick. I go in, and it's before the Veterans Committee, and there's 50 veterans in the room. So I'm early. I've got nothing to do. So I talk to all of them and thank them for their service. And the first thing I say when a bunch of Republicans come in and sit in front of me, they're about to ask me horrible questions about don't we have crime and too much gun control and everything else. And the first thing I said is we have 40,000 veterans in D.C. that don't have the same rights as everybody else, and they moaned. Everybody in the audience went, oh. So these guys didn't have the nerve to say anything. They left. All 3 Republicans stood up.
All of them left? Oh, wow.
They're like, well,
that's crazy.
So take a bunch of veterans with you everywhere you go.
Okay.
That would be my advice.
That may be a good point.
Because it pisses them off, and it should. It should.
But I just want to stress the idea, the notion that one of the things that we should be talking about as the administrations here is, in the words of Mumble Sauce, welcome to D.C., we have your sign at every welcome to DC point in the city, and there's at least 4 or 5 of them, isn't it? It has to be at least 4 or 5 of them.
And most of them just say welcome.
Yeah, but it says welcome, but we want to politicize that welcome. Let's roll out the DC Statehood carpet.
Yeah.
Well, and one of our problems, and this is going to be a problem that Ankit might be very, very helpful with, is that we go up to Capitol Hill and we try to soft sell this. We send,
try to what?
We try to soft sell it.
Sell it.
We send the wrong people. We send the mayor and the head of the district.
With their hat in their hand, is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Oh,
because
wow.
they have to ask for millions and millions and millions of dollars from the federal government. So they don't want to go up there and be mean about it. They just want to be nice with these guys, and they don't want to talk about it being about 2 more Democrats in the United States Senate, that's all that matters to the Republicans. They don't care about any other issue with this. And so they go up there and they say, well, yeah, we're Democrats, but we could become Republicans, and no, they should go up there and say the Democrats ought to be doing as much to make this happen as the Republicans are doing it to
stop
keep
it.
from,
Mm-hmm.
stop.
Now, Ankit, this is
And Ankit might be very helpful.
this is
in
why I
that.
have
That
a
wasn't my
problem
thing.
with 34-year incumbent Eleanor Holmes Norton. She has made this her center issue for the past 35 years, right? Okay. Her hat in the hand, soft selling challenge is that we have 700,000 disenfranchised voters in this city.
Yeah.
We need to do the right thing and give representation to the District of Columbia. Okay, that's been pretty much the message.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they could care less about disenfranchised voters. They've been promoting voter suppression laws nationwide.
Yeah.
She should be showing up everywhere those suppression laws rear their ugly head in Georgia and whatever else locales are doing this, to show that solidarity and alliances to build national support and understand that this is not just a local issue. This is a national issue. I also think it's the linchpin issue, because I think that statehood could be the one issue that could tip the balance of power of this entire country, because theoretically we would have 2 progressive senators that get the vote. We have a senator, but get the vote.
From the district, yeah.
So I want to challenge that. Now, here's my question. We have citizens paying higher rate of taxes than anyone else per capita.
Yes, we do.
Okay. No other non-voting delegate represents an area that pays federal income taxes.
Yep.
Guam doesn't pay federal income tax. Puerto Rico pays federal income taxes.
They pay
So
federal tax.
why isn't the challenge that either you do the right thing and give us self-determination and voter representation and autonomy that we deserve, or we keep our federal income taxes?
Yeah, I think we need to make that clear, because Republicans especially always talk about the government is taxing us too much. And we'll be like, well, we are getting taxed and we don't have any say. We're getting actually taxed higher per capita than any other jurisdiction in the country, and we don't have any say over how that tax money is being spent. So it just needs to be, the hypocrisy of it needs to be pointed out more, and say, well, if you're going to make us pay taxes, then let us have a say on how those taxes are spent.
Yeah.
Right, and you know what? Look, I'm not here to defend Eleanor Holmes Norton, but we should point out, and I'm sure Ankit would point out this out if I didn't, she's gotten the statehood bill passed twice in the United States House of Representatives. She's done her job. The bill's passed twice there. It won't pass in the Senate because it needs 60 votes. But she has done her job in the United States House of Representatives. But that's absolutely true. They get billions and billions of dollars out of the district. And as somebody that owns a house on the line that separates the district from Montgomery County, I'd be all in favor of not paying taxes because my property.
I want to
value
acknowledge
would go
that,
up.
yes, I do agree that our iconic civil rights hero, Eleanor Holmes Norton,
Yeah,
has done a fantastic job. She has
she's
ran
done
her
that.
race.
She made that happen.
The great Nipsey Hussle says it's a marathon, but I think it's more accurate a relay race.
It is a
And
relay race.
you have ran your race and you're passing the baton.
I
Joe
am.
Biden has ran his race. He's passing the baton. I think she's ran her race and she needs to pass the baton. That's how this
She
thing
really does.
continues to go. Now, for the 2 decades that you held this position, what advice are you going to give to this young man as you pass the baton,
Well,
assuming he's
you know,
successful in the general election?
The only thing I would say to Ankit is to be true to himself, to obviously cares about the issue and stay true to that. It's a hard thing to do. It's compromise is which he well knows as somebody that lobbies. Compromise is what we deal with here. Always compromise, but be true to the idea that a little bit is not enough, because that keeps on creeping into the conversation. We went for one vote, for example, that wouldn't have given us autonomy over our budget, wouldn't have given us autonomy over our legal system, and Jesse Jackson, who was both our predecessors, said that statehood would happen in the District of Columbia when it had been raised to the level of an insult for Washingtonians. And I think that's very true, and I would say to keep that in everybody's mind. They just overturned a crime bill. I got lambasted for coming out against, the fact that they should have sent it up there. They shouldn't have sent it up there. They knew it was going to be overturned. But people should be angry that they did that. Our criminal justice system here was over 100 years old, and it needed to be reformed. The only mistakes they made is they sent that liberal bill up to a conservative Congress that they should have known better not to. But the bottom line on it is Congress shouldn't have the right to do this. They shouldn't have the right to tell us how to handle our local affairs. And especially the Republicans who are constantly telling us how we have to give it all to the people. Washington shouldn't spend your money. Washington shouldn't do this. Washington shouldn't do that. And then they feel like they have the right to say and do anything they want in the city. And it's horrible. We all know the examples, and we got to keep on pointing them out. Muriel Bowser didn't get to call out the National Guard on January 11th.
January 6th.
I'm sorry, January 6th. When they stormed the Capitol, she didn't have the power to do that. That's ridiculous. She ought to have the power. The chief executive in Washington, D.C. ought to have that power, and we ought to have the power. We ought to just also respect the fact that, we have so many veterans in this city, and not only taxpayers, but the guy that wrote the national anthem was a Washington soldier. And the guy that wrote TAPS was a Washington soldier. And so every time the flag goes up and every time the flag comes down, a Washingtonian is involved. But when it flies overhead, they forget all about us. And we need to raise it to a level of an insult.
I mean, I think that
level of insult.
Yeah,
I like that.
People always talk about federal representation with statehood, which is of course important, but we need to talk more about the home rule issues, where this is impacting people's everyday lives. We talk about crime in the district. We would have less crime if we had more control over our criminal justice system. We had judges, because we are having a judicial vacancy crisis right now, because the Congress confirms all our judges, and we're always the last.
We have a judicial vacancy crisis.
Crisis. Yeah, it is a crisis.
We have
speak on that, because this is news to me. Speak on that for a moment.
We have about like 8 district court judge positions that are open right now because they haven't been the person who was in the seat left, and the Senate won't confirm, or the president won't nominate, and the Senate won't confirm a replacement. We have somebody who left in, I believe, 2013, whose seat is not yet to be filled.
2013.
Yeah, and so the reason for that is because the Senate is confirming every judge in the country. DC is always the last on their priority list, even if it's a Democratic administration. And so people talk about, why when someone gets arrested, they're back out on the street and like nothing, there's no consequences. Well, the reason for that is because there's not enough judges to hold the trial. If we had our own control of our own criminal justice system, confirmed our own judges.
And they have to be released if they haven't been tried in a certain amount of time.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Whoa, you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends and enemies. This is the type of independent media broadcasting that is necessary, because I'm new to this. I was not privy to that key nugget, and I haven't heard anyone else mention that as a cause, because I've heard the problem stated, but I haven't heard the cause. So thank you for sharing that. What would you say to people who say that statehood it's not that important.
Yeah.
How will you explain to them? You say raise it to the level of an insult.
Yeah.
It should be considered an emergency
Yeah.
legislation. What do you say to these people who think
one
that?
thing you say is just what Ankit just said about the legal system and how much that impacts us. And also, I mean, the classic example we use is that when the city was having an AIDS crisis, we the people told us from Atlanta told us the best practices was to have a needle exchange program. We couldn't have a needle exchange program. We couldn't use our own money to pay for a needle exchange program for 10 years. And so how many people died, Washingtonians died during that period from sharing bad needles? I mean, you know, everybody understood you could get sex from AIDS, but you could put 10 people in a room that shared the same needle, and all 10 of them could get AIDS.
And
from
that was during a period where DC ended up with having 12 times the national AIDS infection rate.
And they finally relented when they saw that. But how many people died while they were deciding that they didn't want to make it wasn't part of their national agenda to even acknowledge AIDS. I mean, it was a health crisis in the district, and that's a very clear example. And Ankit and I could probably go on for the rest of the day about others.
I'll just give
a big one.
One more, which is that, you know, the President Trump, he keeps on talking about a federal takeover.
He keeps on talking.
And you know, unfortunately, he could actually do it if he got a bill passed through Congress. There's been talk about bringing the control board back. Or DC, I don't know, people don't realize this, but
that's part of the Project 2025.
Yeah, you still have the control board authority still exists. The president can still reinstitute the control board if certain conditions are met. And so if you care about any issue in DC, you know, any schools, crime, you know, transportation, that is all on the line.
Women's right to choose.
Yeah, exactly. Women's right to choose. That's all affected by our lack of statehood because they can take it all away from us and we won't have any say if they have the votes in Congress. And so I think this is something that anybody who cares about the well-being of the district in any form should care about, should be getting active on, getting passionate on, so that we can actually have a say over our own issues. And I think that people nationally, it's not just about federal representation. You got to think about how would you feel if you wouldn't have a say over your own local laws, your own, you know, like your own crime rates, your own judges. That's something that every single person, I think, would say the federal government should not get involved in that in my local community.
Yeah. And, you know, when you talk about crime, because Ankit brought crime up,
let's talk
gun
about
control, Eleanor Holmes Norton spent a long part of her career just fighting to keep our gun control laws in effect because
the good old boys wanted to bring their guns with them.
Exactly. They wanted to, this is what killed the one vote bill, was killed because a senator from Nevada, a guy named Ensign, put in a rider that said you could carry an AK-47 or an AR-15 rifle in Lafayette Park across the street from the White House. I mean, crazy stuff like that. And
all right. So I think that we have, neglected, or I should say that we are hesitant to acknowledge who our friends are and who our enemies are. And when it comes to DC Statehood, can we acknowledge who are our alliances with this? I know Progressive Democrats of America have had you on and they've supported in this. You tell me, who are our friends in this and who are not as we move forward in the pursuit of DC Statehood? You have 2 decades of experience. This young man is coming off the bench. Who are our friends? Who are our enemies in the quest for DC Statehood?
Well, it's a partisan battle. So Democrats are certainly our friends, and Republicans are certainly the enemy. That's all it's about. It's all statehood has ever been about. If you look at the history of states coming into the Union, it's always been that way. The Missouri Plan, slave state, non-slave state. The Dakotas, they split it in half so the Republicans could have 4 Republican senators. You know, this power of Congress. So the Democrats are basically our friends. But the big problem is nobody has a dog in this fight except for us. So we have to constantly reach out to America for support. You know, during the civil rights movement, and this is a civil rights struggle, so I often look at the civil rights movement
struggle
of the 60s. You know, there were black people all over the country that felt the pain of the people in Alabama and Mississippi. People, white people all over the country felt it when they saw fire hoses being turned on young people. But nobody feels our pain because everybody else has representation. Nobody knows what it feels like not to be represented. So they all, this is like world peace. When you say to people, do you support states? Do you support the district having the same rights as everybody else? Of course we do. But what are you willing to do for it? We
What
all
are you willing to
support
do?
world peace.
Yeah.
But what are we doing to make it happen?
What are we willing to do?
And
Ankit, friends and enemies.
Yep. I mean, what I would say is that these elected Republicans, you know, the Republican politicians, they don't really speak for the interests of like just a regular Republican voter. If you, I talk with a lot of people outside DC. I talk with Republican, you know, people I know, family, friends, and you tell them what's going on in DC, and almost every single one of them will be like, "What? That's what you all are dealing with? That's, you know, messed up. You deserve statehood." It's really a common sense human rights issue, and it shouldn't be a partisan issue. And for most people, when they understand what is actually going on, it's not a partisan issue. Unfortunately, when it comes to like the politicians, it becomes a partisan issue. And I hope that we can change that, but that is just where we are right now.
Yeah, and thanks for pointing that out because that's what I really should have said. It's the Republican politicians and not because I told you that 80% of the people just surveyed thought we should have the same rates that they did, and they didn't know it.
Yeah.
Well, that's 75% of Republicans also felt that way.
Yeah.
So if we can put pressure on them in their home states, there's every reason to believe, as Ankit points out, that Republicans will support the idea. The local Republican Party has supported statehood since I've been in office anyway, probably before that.
All right. And that willing to step up to the plate and coming off the bench and grabbing the baton. But before we go, last question. What are you guys' predictions in the 2024 presidential election?
Well, I predict that. Now, first of all, let me say that my family all called me in 2016 to ask me what my prediction was, and I said, don't be crazy. Nobody can elect this fool, Donald Trump. And, of course, now they don't
Didn't they
ask,
say it the first time?
Yeah, and now they don't ask my political opinion anymore. So, I mean, maybe I'm not the best predictor, but I think we have the momentum. I think people see these people for what they are. You know, as if he wasn't bad enough, he got J.D. Vance. You know, it's like he went from bad to worse, and that's what I think is going to make the difference. I think it's that these guys are going to be out there for 10 more weeks saying all the horrible things that they've been saying. And I believe in America. I don't know. I believe in America. I believe that we will make the right choice. And as Ankit has already pointed out, I believe that there are good Republicans as well as good Democrats, and I think they'll come together and make the right choice.
I mean,
hope you're right.
You know, I'm not a prognosticator, but what I will say is the polls showed it's a close race, so I think it's really up to us on what will happen here. I'm hoping to organize a trip of people in D.C. to go up to the swing states to knock on doors for the Vice President Harris and Governor Walz. And so I hope that people who are very worried about what's going on, you know, get out there and get on the line. If and when I'm elected in November, I hope that you can get out there in statehood and the statehood cause and go to the rallies and stuff like that. You know, I'm at Ankit Jain DC on social media. You find me on my website jain4dc.com and get our emails and just, you know, get involved because we need people involved in this cause. It's not going to happen unless like Senator Brown said, unless the people of DC see it as an
that I feel very confident in handing the baton to this young man. I think his heart is in the right place. I think he's smart and dedicated, and I think you'll see great things from him.
Wow, that's a stamp.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And, you know, one thing I'll just say in return is that, now everybody in D.C. is behind statehood, but that wasn't always the case. And Senator Brown was there from day one when it was maybe not as popular. He was statehood 100% all the way, and he really carried the baton. And now we're at a point where, at least in D.C., we all agree, and I really appreciate Senator Brown's work on that.
Thank you.
All right, that will do it. This has been Kymone Freeman, DC Delegate candidate, representing We Act Radio. We are here to give flowers to our outgoing U.S. Senator Michael D. Brown and his incoming, coming off the bench, Ankit Jain, who is set to be taking the reins in a successful general election in November. Hopefully we'll be celebrating the loss of Trump. But I think that the loss of Trump is more dangerous than a winning Trump.
Yeah.
I think the loss of Trump is not accepting the outcome of that election like he didn't accept it last time. And we're going to, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
I wish y'all safe travels to the Democratic National Convention. Thank you guys for your work. And Senator Brown, just thank you for being a great support system. It's been an honor to have you in Shadow Politics on We Act Radio. I consider you a friend and a mentor.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank you for taking a stance, because you have been an encouragement to go further, than what we have gone thus far. Thank you for the years of your service.
Well, let me just add what you just said, that it's going to be interesting. That's an old Chinese curse, Maybe be born into interesting times.
Maybe born in interesting times.
And we are in interesting times.
There you have it.
Thanks for having me on We Act, and thank you.
And I
Ankit.
want to end on a high note that we are here in Washington, D.C. The last speech that Martin Luther King gave in Washington, D.C. was March 31st, 1968. Yes. The title of that speech was Remaining Awake During the Great Revolution. He goes on to say in that speech that far too often people find themselves living in periods of great social change, but yet they fail to develop the new ideas, the new mental responses that the new situation demands. They end up sleeping through a revolution. I submit to you that's the quintessential definition of stay woke, which is why the right has turned that into a pejorative. They're anti-woke. Yeah. That's why Trump couldn't stay awake in the RNC convention. Okay. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, friends and enemies, this has been Ankit Jain, U.S. Senator Michael D. Brown, and D.C. Delegate candidate Kymone Freeman, representing We Act Radio. Stay safe, stay strong, stay woke. Peace.